I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly show for news, analysis, and commentary about Kansas and Wichita government and public affairs. Broadcast on Great Plains Television, that's channel 26.1 on Saturdays and Sundays. Also at my site, The Voice for Liberty, that's wichitaliberty.org. There you'll find show notes for today's episodes, all the old episodes of Wichita Liberty TV, all the other content that I and others produce on nearly a daily basis. So today we're continuing on with our series of candidates for Kansas governor. We'd like to have all the major candidates. So far, no Democrats have accepted, so we're working with Republicans. And today we have our current governor, Jeff Colyer, who's running for re-election. He was born in Hays, Kansas, earned a bachelor's degree in economics from Georgetown University, a master's degree in international relations from Cambridge University, and a medical degree from the University of Kansas. He served as a White House fellow under President Reagan and President Bush, the first one in international affairs. Over the last 25 years, Dr. Colyer has volunteered as a surgeon in dangerous war zones, and we're going to see a short video a little bit later on about some of this experience. Politically, he served 2 years in the Kansas House of Representatives, then was elected to the Kansas Senate, resigning that position after 2 years because he was the successful candidate for lieutenant governor along with Sam Brownback as governor. They were then reelected in 2014. And in January of this year, Dr. Colyer became governor upon the resignation of Governor Brownback when he moved on to the Trump administration. Dr. Colyer and his wife have 3 daughters, and they lived in Johnson County, although I think now in Cedar Crest. So, Governor Colyer, welcome to Wichita Liberty TV.
It is great to be here with you, and it's always a great show on Liberty.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, we've had some unfortunate news about the Kansas economy. Just came out that in 2017, the GDP of Kansas in real inflation-adjusted terms shrunk by 0.1% from 2016 to 2017. Only 2 states did worse. Jobs are growing in Kansas at about half the rate of the nation, and personal income last year grew 1% in Kansas, 3.1% for the nation as a whole. So I'm sure you're aware of these statistics and thinking about them, but what are we going to do to get out of this economic hole that I think is really unfortunate and very painful for people in Kansas?
You know, it has been painful, and we've had a lot of trials over the years. Part of this is related to the ag economy. Commodity prices have fallen through the bottom, and that has been a real challenge for us. Oil prices dropped. Now they're back on the way up. There are a lot of things that affect the Kansas economy, and we're working very hard on them. Let me give you one example just today. On ag prices, for example, sorghum, the Chinese instituted a 179% tariff on Kansas sorghum. We're the largest provider to China. We saw prices drop dramatically. With that, as soon as that happened, I was talking with the Trump administration, the United States Trade Representative, farmers, traders. I even called in the Consul General of China, and we were working, on this. And today, the Chinese have announced that they are dropping that 179% tariff. You have to be aggressive on those things. But also, though, we need to be aggressive on growing our state. We are a great state. We have a great workforce. Kansans, believe in their jobs. They show up on time, and they do marvelous work. Mm-hmm. The issue for us, though, is our unemployment rate today is 3.4%. There are 50,000 open jobs in the state. And the way to grow the Kansas state economy is people with better jobs and more skills, and that means more skills, and it also means more capital investment. And I've been working very hard on that. We've got a lot to do, but in addition to that, we need to make sure that we have low regulation, low taxes in order to make this work.
Mm-hmm. So Chris Kobach, as I'm sure you know, one of your major not competitors, but what is it? Competitors? Not competitors.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right.
Yeah. Fellow candidates.
So he very aggressively wants to return back to the Brownback tax plan. Do you agree with that, or is there some compromise in the middle you'd be more comfortable with?
Where we need to grow as a state. And now the federal tax plan has changed dramatically for us. And so that gives us a new opportunity. And that's an opportunity to make our taxes lower, simpler, and flatter overall. I'm looking forward, for us, and we want to make sure that the Kansas economy is growing. Let's take advantage of those. We had a chance earlier this year to do this in the legislature. We were hoping to get that bill passed that would have taken advantage of it, and it didn't quite get through the House.
Yeah, so that was kind of a big disappointment there, I think. So let's go ahead and take a first commercial break on Wichita Liberty TV. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, welcome back again to Wichita Liberty TV. I'm Bob Weeks with our co-host Carl Peter John. Special guest this week, Kansas Governor Dr. Jeff Colyer. Carl, you had a question.
I've got actually a whole bunch, but I'm going to focus a couple here on the medical side of the equation because Obamacare has been a disaster. I think most folks are agreed on that who follow medical care, but the Brownback-Colyer administration implemented Medicaid reforms. Question, there's been a lot of criticism specifically from folks on the political left who said, hey, it hasn't worked. Has it worked, and where do we stand?
Yeah. So where we stand is this. When we came into office, Medicaid in Kansas was being run by 4 different cabinet agencies. We actually eliminated an entire cabinet agency in order to manage this better. And what we've done is we competed it out, and so it looks more like commercial insurance that everybody else has. And here's the result. There are independent studies right now that show that we have saved $2 billion over the last few years. And the way that we did that is our ER visits are down, doctor visits are up, and we're able to save money by getting the right care at the right place. Now, we have a lot more to do. Every Medicaid program does. And I think that we have a lot to build on, but we're going to be very consistent and working very hard on this.
Would you veto taking Medicaid under Obamacare expansion going forward?
Yes. That was a program that doesn't make sense for Kansas. And it was something that, if we look at where we're going in the future in Kansas, this is not a program that certainly would save us money. It could actually be a real drain on the Kansas budget and really throw us way out of whack.
Well, we've talked about, and since we're talking about Medicaid, and that ties into welfare, the legislature had enacted some welfare reform, put in place some work requirements. Where do you stand related to the welfare question more broadly than just Medicaid?
Yeah. The welfare issue has been a tremendous success. The number of people that are on welfare has been cut by more than half. And what we did is we have a lot of data that actually follows these individuals. And if you help them find a job, what we're finding is that a large majority of these people are actually earning above the poverty level just a few weeks or a few months after they've gotten off of that TANF program. Those work requirements make a big difference. What those work requirements look like is making sure that they do some training, that they get their resume together, and that they actually go out and try to find work. They have to spend some time doing that. I think the public finds that that's appropriate. But here's the other thing, is the outcomes for people that do this. They live longer, they have less mental health problems, they certainly have the pride of work and have the opportunity that every Kansan does. And that's what this is about.
Well, let me focus in, because with Obamacare, I think Kansas is down to just one provider, as I understand it. Is that correct?
No, we're on the Obamacare part, which is the exchange, we're down to 2. We were down to 1, and there was another one that came in. And we're in that process right now. That's done through the insurance commissioner's office. You've got to have competition, in this. But Obamacare, what it's done, a couple of things. One is it drove up the price of health insurance for every Kansan. What it did is it required more benefits and at a higher value, and it made us look more like Massachusetts rather than making Massachusetts look more like Kansas. And so it has been a disaster for Kansas.
Well, we had Dr. Jim Barnett, another candidate for governor. He was here about 2 months ago, and he said expanding Medicare, he favors it for humanitarian reasons. Do you disagree with that argument?
Did you mean Medicare or Medicaid?
Medicaid.
Medicaid. I meant to say yes.
Yeah. So I'm somebody that I still do a little bit of my practice. I cover my practice 90%, but I cover the emergency room, and I take care of people that do not have insurance there. And we are trying to help them. The system does provide some care to individuals. The people that we're talking about in the Medicaid expansion program, in Kansas, it's different than many other states. What we're talking about is we're talking about only able-bodied adults. We're not talking about children. We're not talking about seniors.
Because they're already covered by various
like
other
the
programs.
Like
the S-CHIP program, for example, for children.
Or other programs, or Medicare. Now, what we're talking about is individuals that are able-bodied adults, and if they would work 33 hours at a minimum wage, they would actually qualify for the Obamacare, the exchange, under that system. And so how do we get people that we can get them into that system? I think what we really need to do is, I'd like to see Washington overturn Obamacare and return the regulation to the states. Give us the money so that we, if you're going to be giving money, let us run it the way Kansas wants to run it.
So this would be a block grant, that's what that
a block grant
is called, yeah.
That's correct. And we worked with the administration. I've been in the White House several times on this issue. And I think that's a way that Kansas can have a Kansas solution rather than a New York, California solution.
Okay. Well, let's take our second commercial break for the day. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back again to Wichita Liberty TV. Bob Weeks here with co-host Karl Peter John. Our special guest today, Kansas Governor Jeff Colyer, who is a plastic surgeon. So a lot of people think you're just sitting around in Cupcake Land, Overland Park, or wherever it is, doing tummy tucks and butt lifts and stuff. But actually, you do a lot more than that in a lot more dangerous places. So we're going to show a brief segment from CBS 60 Minutes that was on a few years ago about some of the work that Dr. Jeff Colyer does on a volunteer basis.
For 10 years during the Civil War in Sierra Leone, thousands of teenagers and even young children were kidnapped by anti-government rebels from the Revolutionary United Front, known as the RUF. Children as young as 5 years old were forced to fight on the rebel side, and to keep them from escaping, their commanders branded them like cattle with their army's initials, RUF.
They were informed that if you try to escape, then the government troop would identify you as being part of us, and you will be treated as a spy, and they may kill you.
Into this horror has come a plastic surgeon from Kansas City. He'll conduct and organize hundreds of operations to remove the children's debilitating stigma. It's a program that Dr. Jeff Colyer is starting up for America's International Medical Corps.
I don't think you can ever accept the fact that you're taking children and branding them and forcing them to do terrible things. It's one thing to have a little scar. It's another one when that scar is what your destiny is.
It's a world away from home in Kansas City. Jeff, you have taken unpaid leave from a successful plastic surgery practice in the United States.
That's how I pay the bills to come over and do this. What am I going to do with these scars on these kids? How can I hide that RUF so nobody will know?
Assisting him is Dr. Benson Parker, a doctor from Sierra Leone who Colyer is training to perform this complicated plastic surgery. Both the doctor's mother and brother were killed during a rebel offensive, an offensive that was called Kill Every Living Thing.
How are we going to make a difference in the long run in a place like Sierra Leone? Can we get this healthcare system working again?
Right now, the health system is barely functional, especially deep in rebel country.
I mean, the war doesn't just hurt people, it destroys their society. It ruins everything in the community. You know, the basic health care, it doesn't exist in this country.
The country is now in pieces.
What I'm going to do, I'm just going to dab right here. Okay.
But as Augusta knows, the RUF signature speaks for itself.
It's really amazing to see the kids. Before, they won't look at their chest. And it's amazing to actually see them look down and smile. They have a future. It's a wonderful feeling. What do you think? Okay? They want to have a future. You know, these are kids that can go on to school, they can get jobs, and they can also have a peaceful life ahead of them.
Okay, so Dr. Colyer, that seems like pretty heroic work in a dangerous part of the country. You've been to other places, I think Afghanistan and so forth. What motivates you to do this type of work?
You know, I believe in service, that we're here to make a difference in people's lives. Doing that on the medical side, helping Kansans, but also working in war zones. So I was in Rwanda during the genocide, places like Afghanistan, Iraq, the Syrian border, South Sudan. Been doing this for a long time. And I think it's a way that we can make a difference in other people's lives. It's a very dangerous situation. And what I learned is it's not about the surgery. It is how do you help a community get up and going again, even when they're shooting at you. Mm-hmm. And that, for me, that understanding of listening to people and how do you solve those problems, and you've got to be tenacious about it. And you have to keep your head, when everybody else is losing their head, you need to keep your head together in a war zone.
And I think we saw in that video that you were working with a local surgeon there, training him how to do some of this work. So that, I guess, builds upon that legacy of just going in there and doing a couple is good, but you're training them to be more self-sufficient.
That's right. The organization I work with, International Medical Corps, they make long-term commitments to a place, and they'll go where nobody else will go. And they work really closely with the local community so that you're taking control of their lives once again. And that, to me, is the best thing about it.
Mm-hmm. Karl?
Well, when we talk about international medicine under these environments, what lessons can you learn for the United States that you've seen from these other places in the world and the way they deliver medical care? Because we keep hearing the argument, you know, every place else it's government involved and it's much better when the government controls it.
No, it certainly isn't. And I've been around the world and worked in, England and other places. The United States has the best medical care in the world. And we are starting to focus more on outcomes and getting those values for people. But believe me, if you have cancer, if you're a woman who has breast cancer, your chance of surviving after your discovery is much higher in the United States than it is in many European countries. We have a lot to do, and we can. And what I've learned is that you have to really focus on the patient and focus on the outcome. And there's a lot of economics that are involved, and we've got to deal with that. And I think there are some real reforms that we can make on the national level that makes it simpler and more cost-effective.
Well, let's take our last commercial break for the day. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, welcome back to our last segment of Wichita Liberty TV. For today, Bob Weeks here, co-host Carl Peterjohn. Our guest this week, Kansas Governor Dr. Jeff Colyer. So, Dr. Colyer, because I'm on the Kansas media list, I'm getting emails every day about a flurry of bill signings. What do you think of some of the really good things the legislature did this year that you approved of, and some not so good things, or things that they didn't do that they should have?
This could have been a really contentious legislative session. If you think about over the last few years, we were going on late into June, and this year we got it done early. We got it done May 4th. And this was probably, arguably, a much harder decision. We had to deal with school finance, and we did. We ended up with a compromise plan that puts some more money into schools, but also what I insisted on is that it starts including outcomes, that we actually look at individual schools there. I think that was important. But we also dealt with some other budgetary issues there. We had to deal with some things in mental health and dealing with the problems of DCF. One of the things that I've been really starting from the very beginning is I think we need much more transparency in government. And we started, so my very first days, we started with several executive orders. We've had some legislative initiatives there. I think when you have more information that Kansans can know what's going on in their government. I want them to participate. And that more information is so important to getting the real outcomes for us.
You mentioned DCF, that's the Department of Children and Families, the Kansas government agency that is responsible for unfortunate children who find themselves in, unfortunate situations, I guess it is. There's been some problems with that, but you've taken some reform action, I think. Could you talk about that, please?
Sure. Evil happens, with kids, and it is just so unfortunate. But these kids are our charges when they are in foster care and adoptive care. And there have been a lot of concerns. So what we did is we've changed much of the leadership in the Department of Children and Families, and we're in the process right now of a top-to-bottom review. I mean, I've even asked the parents to bring their foster kids out to Cedar Crest, the governor's mansion, to talk to them, about this firsthand so I hear it. And what they're telling us is that they want us to be more accountable. They want us to listen to them. And so we're changing a lot of systems there overall. And we want to be much more responsive. We want to make sure that we take care of those problems. If there are kids that are sleeping in offices, I won't stand for that. We got some more money put into the budget so that we can deal with that, and I think we'll have that issue settled here in the next few months or few weeks here. But we've got a lot to do, and it is so important that we address them, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, the challenge I see for Kansas, we've got huge fiscal issues and a huge amount of uncertainty because we've got court decisions that continue to be driving the public policy agenda here. And Kansas, I think, has resumed a terrible position. We're a high tax point on the prairie with high income taxes, high sales taxes. We're one of the few states in the entire country with a statewide property tax. And what's Kansas's comparative advantage when you're trying to market our state in an environment from a fiscal perspective when we've got, I think our tax situation, we're becoming more and more like New Jersey and Connecticut and California and New York and less like Missouri, Oklahoma, and Colorado.
Yeah, and let's add on the hidden tax of regulation as well. Okay, and so for growing a business, we need low taxes, low regulation, certain regulation, so it's fair and seen by everybody. We also need a great workforce. And I think that as we see what's going on in Washington now, we have a whole new tax system that has come down from Washington. I think that's an opportunity for us in the very beginning of the next session to really address this and really go and look at, this is the first time that we can really look at all of that. But I'd like to see taxes lower, flatter, fairer.
Well, I hope it works out. I was following a friend up in Minnesota, and the Democrats have their plan for returning the federal windfall that they're receiving to the people they think the taxpayers who should have it. The Republicans, they have their plan to reduce it. In liberal Minnesota, and here in Kansas, we rejected doing that, and the state's going to hang on to it. So
yeah, we were
moving in the wrong direction?
We were 4 votes short in the House, and I think we can still go, we're going to address that issue. And while there were some people that had questions about it, this is something that's very important to us, and we will.
Well, and I notice also that, for years we've been criticizing transfers from the highway fund to the general fund, but those are going to continue even next year, aren't they?
Actually, this year, we actually started changing that. And so we actually started reversing a little bit of that this year. It's a small amount, but we're going to have a tight budget. But here's the other side of that is we at Kansas growing, and I think we can we can be in a very good spot. We've got some hard choices to make over the next few years. But think about one of the other things that I think we are starting to address them. And Standard & Poor's, our credit rating has been going down numerous times. And just a couple of weeks ago, Standard & Poor's for the first time raised our credit outlook for the state of Kansas. We've got a road to go, but we're starting to get in that direction.
Well, very good. We're at the end of our time for today. So, Governor Colyer,
good
thanks
seeing
very
you.
much for stopping by. And just as a reminder, I think the last day to register to vote for the primary election is July 17th, I think. The primary election across the state of Kansas for governor and other statewide races, that's the first Tuesday in August. So get out there, register, get out there to vote. Thank you again, Dr. Colyer, for today.